My fellow Jamaicans, good evening. Over 2 years ago, we embarked on Jamaica's economic reform program, supported by a 4-year extended fund facility with the International Monetary Fund. Since then, we have had 7 quarterly reviews, and this week, the International Monetary Fund approved our successful completion of the 8th review. In the process of successfully passing these tests, we have rescued the economy from near collapse and earned the respect of our international partners. The country's finances are now in much better shape. We have reduced reliance on borrowing and have been able to achieve a reduction in interest rates, which gives investors access to cheaper capital. As we live more within our means, we have been spending less on imports. This means that we are able to save more of what we earn in foreign exchange earnings. This is shown in Jamaica's balance of payments deficit, which has improved from 13.4% of gross domestic product in 2011-2012 to 5.3% in 2014-2015. The lowest it has been in 2 decades. At the same time, as a result of our prudent management of the economy, our net international reserves, which were approximately $800 million and falling in 2013, have substantially increased and are now in excess of $2.4 billion. As the economy continues to improve, the prospects for employment are also improving. Since January 2012, the labor force has increased by 39,200, and the employed labor force has increased by 33,200. More Jamaicans are finding jobs. The rate of inflation continues to decline, and at the end of fiscal year 2014-15 was 4%, the lowest it has been in 48 years. By maintaining a competitive exchange rate, we have made our exports more competitive. In addition, Jamaica has become more attractive to foreign investors. For 2014, foreign direct investment amounted to approximately $700 million, the second highest in the English-speaking Caribbean. The economic reform program is on track. Despite these achievements, I am only too aware that many Jamaican families are still experiencing difficulties in making ends meet, and many of you still question whether our successes in reforming the economy have been worth the sacrifices made by our pensioners, our public sector workers, our taxpayers, and bondholders, and whether we are really on track to restore stability, growth, and competitiveness to the Jamaican economy. We need to remind ourselves that it was the unsustainable level of debt built up over 40 years that brought us to the brink of bankruptcy and made the economic reform program indispensable to our nation's survival. The country's survival became even more precarious in 2011 when the rupture in the relationship between the then government of Jamaica and the International Monetary Fund and our other development partners effectively closed the country from the capital markets of the world. Funds were not available at affordable interest rates. Even grant resources were denied us. Our reserves were dwindling and investor confidence was declining. The most telling sign of our near bankruptcy as a country was the high level of public debt, which stood at approximately 145% of gross domestic product by March 2013, without any multilateral support, and had become a millstone around the neck of every Jamaican. To service this debt in the 2010 fiscal year, it took 60 cents out of every dollar of the budget. In addition, to pay public sector wages, it took another 21 cents of every dollar. That meant that 81 cents of every dollar spent by the government went to servicing the debt and paying the wages of the public sector. This left the government with only 19 cents of every dollar to fix roads, improve the health service, build schools, provide water and housing, meet our national security costs, clean drains, etc. The primary objective of the economic reform program is to reduce the amount spent on debt servicing and the public sector wage bill, in order to allow the government to spend on services that will improve the quality of life of our citizens. The progress we have made is evident in the fact that whilst we were servicing the debt at 60 cents in the dollar in 2010, we are now using 42 cents of every dollar as at the end of the last fiscal year to service the debt. We are making progress. However, to meet our ultimate objective, we must also reduce the share of the public sector wage bill, which has grown from 21 cents out of the dollar in 2010 to 31 cents out of every dollar this past fiscal year, as a consequence of us meeting payments for all wage agreements which were outstanding. Unfortunately, there are many of us who do not make the link between the reduction of the debt service and public sector wage costs and the ability of the government to provide the social services and capital investments which will allow the country to progress and improve the quality of life of all Jamaicans. As a result, some continue to express the view that we should seek to borrow more money in order to pay wage increases. What the government has offered in the wage negotiations is what we can afford at this time. While we appreciate the demand for a higher rate of wage increases at this time, we simply cannot afford it. Let me emphasize, the reform of the economy and the improvement in the quality of life of every Jamaican is inextricably linked to the reduction of our debt and the public sector wage bill. We will have to continue to live within our means. In order to spend more on wages, we will have to earn more, and we can only earn more by attracting greater levels of investment, local and foreign, which will provide employment for more Jamaicans. Faced with the choices before us, it might appear to some to be far easier to listen to the voices of political expediency and make commitments to wage increases which the present level of available resources could not support. To proceed on that path, however, would only end up reversing the progress we have made and betray the trust we have built locally and internationally. We would lose all the gains that the country has made thus far. This administration will not be taking Jamaica down that road. Jamaica is still at a fragile point, halfway through the program, and we still have a long way to go. We must maintain the momentum and do nothing to reverse or derail the substantive gains that already have been made. The successes associated with the path that we are presently proceeding on are measured by the quarterly reviews of the economy. As I mentioned, the International Monetary Fund approved the 8th review this week. What does this mean for the ordinary Jamaican? It is the passing of these quarterly reviews over the last 2 fiscal years that made us eligible to receive some $15.5 billion in grants and some $39.6 billion in concessionary loans. The interest rates paid on the concessionary loans mean that although we continue to borrow, the debt servicing costs will be considerably less. We should recall also that over the period of adjustment, the government has made every effort to protect the most vulnerable by increasing payments to the PATH program beneficiaries by over 30%, with the elderly receiving a 67% increase. By ensuring also that government pensioners continued to receive an increase in their pension benefits. We have also twice increased both the national minimum wage and the minimum wage for industrial security guards. We have settled back pay to health sector workers, teachers, correctional workers, and firemen. We have also reduced the effective rate of personal income tax by raising the tax-free portion of income received, and also made improvements to our roads, schools, and hospitals along the way. Whilst reducing the debt and restoring macroeconomic stability provide the foundation for our program of economic recovery, it is the sustained economic growth that will provide the jobs and improve the quality of life for Jamaican families. That is our ultimate objective. I cannot repeat often enough that economic growth takes place when we are able to sell goods and services to people in global markets at competitive prices. There's no way around the market and our need to be competitive. Nobody anywhere in the world has an obligation to buy from us. It is against this background that I now turn to the progress we are making in achieving economic growth. While we are not where we want to be as yet, the economy is returning to growth. In traversing the length and breadth of Jamaica, there is evidence of increased productive activity to be seen in small, medium, and large businesses. Although the drought last year set us back, there was positive growth during the last fiscal year, reflecting an increase in the services sector, the rise in tourism, and an increase in construction activities. 9 agri-parks have already been successfully established and are producing onions, cassava, potatoes, and other crops. The expectation is that over the next 3 years, 21 additional agri-parks will be established. When fully implemented, these parks are expected to impact thousands of Jamaicans directly and indirectly, and will not only assist in food exports, but further reduce our reliance on imported foodstuff. The business process outsourcing sub-industry continues to expand and provide employment to thousands of Jamaicans. I am particularly pleased with recent announcements which propose to further expand this sector to the corporate area. There are few other areas of our economy that have the potential of this sector for boosting employment in the short to medium term. Our tourism industry continues to show positive signs, not only in the numbers of visitors to the island, but in the significant number of investment projects that are currently underway. I do, however, want to highlight a further expansion to Jamaica's tourism product with the introduction of integrated resort developments. This status is a precursor to the granting of a casino license. We confidently expect that this will lead to a strengthening of the tourism industry's competitiveness and the bolstering of economic development through job creation, increased tax revenue, and additional demand for locally produced goods and services. Prior to the granting of an approved integrated resort developer's license, the government undertakes a thorough assessment and review process to determine the potential impact and sustainability of the proposed developments, as well as the integrity of the related parties. I can now announce that the Cabinet has given its approval for provisional development orders to be issued to Harmony Cove Limited and Celebration Jamaica Development Limited as approved integrated resort developers. In terms of the Harmony Cove development, the total estimated cost for phase 1 is projected at $970 million US, with annual job creation forecast at more than 1,200 direct jobs during construction and more than 2,700 direct full-time equivalent jobs once operations commence. For Celebration Jamaica Development Limited, the estimated cost for phase 1 is approximately $500 million US, with employment in excess of 2,400 persons. Each of these projects, under the terms of the order, will be required to start construction by the middle of next year and to ultimately construct 2,000 hotel rooms each. As it relates to infrastructure, significant progress has been made on the North-South Highway being undertaken by the China Harbour Engineering Company, CHEC, representing some $600 million US in investment, with the full completion of the project scheduled for early January 2016. Progress continues to be made also with the recent divestment of the Kingston Container Terminal and the proposed divestment of the Norman Manley International Airport and the Jamaica Railway Corporation, as well as with the planning for the Portland Bight port development. Whilst major investments are necessary, sustained levels of economic growth requires the expansion of small and medium-sized businesses, which represent the most significant element of economic activity in the country and provides the largest share of employment. Equally important is the fact that the expansion of entrepreneurship at this level is the only sustainable way of broadening ownership of the economy and achieving a more equitable distribution of the wealth of the country. The government, through the Development Bank of Jamaica, has placed a lot of focus on mobilizing this sector over the past 3 years, with, among other things, the development of a voucher program which twins the availability of business advisory services with the availability of capital for medium and small enterprises. The government is also providing this sector with the tools to become more modern and efficient and strengthening the supply chain arrangement which links small businesses with larger businesses and with each other. This will enhance the country's competitiveness in domestic import substitution activities and facilitate growth. The cost of energy doesn't discriminate and impacts all businesses, and the reduction in the cost of energy is an important component of Jamaica's growth agenda. There are quite a few exciting investments in the energy sector which are well underway, including the conversion by the JPS of the Bogue power plant to natural gas, the development of the Jamalco power plant, along with other investments in wind and solar technologies that will go a far way in further reducing the cost of electricity. Jamaica is making progress under the Economic Reform Program, and the recent upgrades by the credit rating agencies are further evidence that we are on the right track. Locally, both consumer and business confidence is on the rise, and the improvements to our business environment make Jamaica the best country in the English-speaking Caribbean to do business. We are making progress, but there is still more to be done. The program has shown thus far that prudent management, fiscal consolidation, and debt reduction have not only returned the country to growth, but provided employment, reduced interest rates, and ensured that we have sufficient net international reserves. Much more remains to be done. We have to ensure a speedier rate of development approvals and reduce the humbug of government red tape. We have to speed up public sector reform and our tax compliance efforts so that we can expand the tax base and reduce the tax rates. We want even greater levels of business startups, especially by our young people and those in new high-tech sectors. 2 years ago, when we embarked on the economic reform program, Jamaica was ranked amongst the most indebted countries in the world and had lost its credibility in the international community. Jamaica was hardly considered an attractive place for investment. Today, 2 years later, we have turned all of this around. Yes, much more remains to be done, but we have to build on the gains that have been made and not abandon our course. Let us continue to work together to bring growth and sustained economic development to Jamaica, land we love. Good evening.